Hello everyone. So in this video, I am unboxing my brand new Sony A7 IV mirrorless digital camera, and I ordered this because I actually want to replace my aging Sony A7 III, which is simply my favorite camera to use, besides my Sony A7 III, which I bought, around the same time. And each of those cameras, A7 III and A7 III, actually serves entirely different purpose for the kind of photography that I do. So usually in my studio for products that I shoot, I always go with A7 III simply because the sensor offers largest or the highest resolution, one of the highest resolutions that I can get in a mirrorless camera. Outside of the studio, actually, I always use the A7 III as my main shooter if I'm doing a portrait shoot on the beach, a wedding, or any other kind of events photography. The A7 III is always going to be my default go-to camera, and usually I just mount my actually longer focal length lens on my A7 III, and then usually the shorter focus lens on my A7R III as backup, because again, A7R III offers a higher megapixel count. So if I'm using a wider lens, I can always crop it in and then still have a similar image quality as compared to the longer lens effect on the A7 III. Now, both of those cameras actually have pretty much exactly the same ergonomics, which I find for the most time very comfortable to use. The only downside, again, I think it's other people's downside, is the pinky is always, there's no place to put the pinky for me. So sometimes during a long shoot, it gets really fatigued, especially with the giant lens mounted on here. But that's my only complaint for the A7 III. The A7R III, the focusing area is actually the autofocusing area is much reduced compared to the A7 III. And again, that's why it's my second choice when it comes to events shooting. And also because the sensor or the ISO noise is much better from the smaller sensor of the A7 III compared to the larger sensor once the light goes kind of dark. Okay, but other than that, each of those cameras serve a distinctive purpose. And now on to the A7 IV. What I want to do is actually using this camera to replace my aging A7 III. And there are a few different areas that actually is quite improved from the A7 IV compared to A7 III. And we'll talk about those areas in a little bit once we get the camera out. And again, I haven't even held the cameras yet. So I'm really excited. I ordered this from Adorama and they shipped it on the same day Sony released the camera for the general public. I'm not one of those elite Sony reviewers that gets a camera early. I paid for my camera using my hard-earned cash from my photography business. So I should have a pretty good idea of, if this camera is worth the upgrade or not. And again, I'm not paid by Sony for saying those things. We'll find out very soon after we play around with the camera for just a little bit. What's included in the box, it seems to be quite limited of stuff from the box, and the packaging is actually slightly different. This is a camera probably. Let's see what's in here. Looks like a USB-C to USB 3.0 charging cable or data transmission cable. This looks like battery. The exact same battery as my other two cameras. And what is this? And of course, a wall adapter for charging the camera with the battery in the camera. Okay, so With the A7 III, it's pretty much came with the same stuff, a little bit more stuff than the A7 IV, but for the A7 R III, it actually came with a dedicated charger that charges the battery a lot quicker. So that's the difference. Again, Sony is aiming or targeting this camera for, I guess, prosumer level use. So they're not including a lot more stuff that's kind of useful for actual professionals per se. But again, I would consider myself a professional since I make mainly my income from photography. And I kind of wish they have included traditionally like a dedicated battery charger instead of just a USB cable and open up the door and charge the camera, which is not, as professional as one think. Now, right off the bat, I can tell you the grip is definitely improved. Look at the size difference of the grip. Now, I can actually rest my pinky. It feels a lot more comfortable to hold, definitely a lot more comfortable to hold. And the whole area is much larger. The grip area is much larger compared to the A7 III and A7 R III, for sure. Looking at the top, you had one more dedicated, or actually they redesigned this wheel and improved on this wheel per se. So over here on the older generation, this wheel at the bottom right is entirely for exposure compensation. And you have your turning wheel here, which is actually pretty good. I haven't found, anything annoying about this little wheel right here. On this camera, they changed this to a fully customizable dial with actually a lock button. So if you lock it, you can turn it, and you unlock it, you can turn this. And this dial, again, much easier to actually reach, to be honest, compared to this one, for sure. And this pad is also changed. The pad looks different. Everything airs. The directional dial feels pretty much the same. The button is more tactile and got a longer throw. When you press it, you gotta press a little deeper to register some stuff. But some of the buttons, they actually raised the height, so it's easier to press, like the preview button, I guess, because it's a more important button. Now over here, all the buttons are very flat and sometimes hard to press if you're wearing a glove. This one, I would say, is more glove-friendly on the A7 IV. Huge improvements on the LCD screen. Now, I can do a selfie vlog with a screen like this. And I kind of wish they had it on A7 III. And to be honest, if they had this screen, I probably wouldn't even have upgraded, because right now I do quite a lot more video stuff, and this screen is actually should come down to extremely helpful when I'm trying to record something using my A7 IV. With my A7 III, my old setup was actually mounting a Ninja 5 on the top, and that setup is actually super heavy and cumbersome to use. That's why I did not kind of use that as much as I thought I would. And right now I'm just using my iPhone 12 Pro to record this unboxing video. So go figure. Maybe with this screen, I should be able to do more video stuff with the A7 IV on top of, still photography. Now, looking at those access ports, let's see if there's anything different. The doors are actually really nice. Try to see. Those doors are much better designed compared to those old crappy flappy plastic doors. Like the old one, it just dangles around and it goes everywhere. As you can see, like I hate those covers, okay? The old cover are definitely not as well thought as the new one, which, look at that, it's much simpler. And the HDMI port, finally, it's a full-size HDMI port. Huge improvements compared to the mini one. The downside for me is I actually have to go buy a full-size HDMI cable because I invested on those mini HDMI for the A7 III, which is a pity. Now over here, you still got your standard USB-C charging port or data port, as well as a traditional micro USB port if you decide to use that. You have your dedicated microphone monitor port or headphone monitor jack and a mic jack over here. And wow, those doors are really, really easy to use and a joy to open and close. I kind of feel like this camera actually got lighter compared to the A7 III, but I'm not sure. We'll have to find out later from the data spec. But the whole thing feels larger, to be honest, compared to A7 III, again, because of this large grip. Now, let's see if I can just put on my favorite 35 1.8 lens. Again, my absolute favorite lens on the Sony because of the focusing or like general use. It's so versatile compared to the 50. And it's got a pretty good bokeh. 35 1.8. This is what it looks like with a 35 mounted on the A7 IV. And also, interestingly, they kind of cleared up the front of the camera. It looks simple with, you know, the lettering. It doesn't say 3 or 4 on the front. It just says A7 series. I guess Sony kind of wants to upgrade their branding. Okay. Also, this style. Thankfully, Sony is not using this horrible like dial on the A7 III because you have to press it to switch the modes. A huge hassle and very hard to turn as well. So I absolutely hate this dial on A7 III. They improved it on the A7 III. Probably I think people complained. And this is definitely a big improvement. And also the dial got simpler. You have the some of the less used feature between the still and the video and the S and Q mode over here. So it's simplified. I would say it's simplified and very easy to use. You stay in one mode and then you can customize each different modes a lot more efficiently. Okay, and I believe they also had a separate function for their still and video settings. From some of the reviews that I've read, which is a huge improvement as well. Now let's actually just put a battery in here. So I'm just going to use one of my existing battery from A7 III. We're going to put it in the R3 and go through the camera and take a quick look. Again, my first time powering up this camera. Very exciting. Let's check the... This door is also improved upon the old design. The old design was actually not very good because check this out. I actually damaged the door here on the A7 III. I dropped the camera, it fell on the floor, and this kind of area got dented. And now it doesn't automatically pop open. I kind of wish that it's got the newer design where you release this and you physically push. This way, it's much easier and quicker and safer to access this door compared to the old design, which again, I'm so glad that it improved on the battery door as well compared to the last generation. You got an SD card slot, and I think this is what they call the CF Express slot, which is also compatible with a SD card. So let's see, and I believe the SD rating, the SD speed that both slots handle are actually kind of different. So I got to find out exactly what speed those slots can handle. But other than that, I think it's still, even with any Class 10 SD cards, you should be able to record 4K videos without any issues. Okay, so let's turn on the camera. Time is 5:20. Oops, I think I gotta go back. Where is the back button? It says manual. Oh, wow, look at that. This is a touch screen. I'm surprised because my A7 III touchscreen doesn't work besides autofocus. And this one, the touchscreen actually works perfectly fine. This is pretty nice, pretty cool. Wow. Let's see. So it's 520, and I'm gonna hit OK. Wow, this is nice. So can also use imaging edge mobile. Nope, not gonna use it. And the camera is ready to use. And I mean, honestly, it feels just like my other Sony cameras, but from my understanding, again, autofocus, it's one of the best. Okay, especially with tracking and everything. Apparently, this tracks both animal eye and wow, look at that. This manual looks so organized, so different from the never from the manual that people would never remember what the heck is going on in all those different settings. This manual is so primitive on the old A7 III and A7R III. I hated it. And this one, it's looking a lot more organized and huge improvements on the manual settings as well. And let's see if it's touchscreen. So yeah, it's crazy. This touchscreen is fully functional. And it registers my touch, pretty precisely. And wow, look at that tracking. So basically, if you touch the screen, it's gonna track a spot all the way everywhere. This is so cool. And I can tell you, the autofocus is so much better. Look, it never loses it. That's crazy. So yeah, like if you guys want the best autofocus experience and you can spend just a little bit more than $2,000, you should definitely get the Sony A7 IV. This is gonna give you the best autofocus experience. And again, on top of that, you're also getting a flip screen camera. Let's see if it's able to, here we go. If I click myself, right here. Wow. And the only downside, again, is that the screen is actually off to the side. So if I'm looking at the camera, I'm always looking at the screen, which means I have to look slightly to the left side of the camera. Not sure if it's, a huge downside, but this is just something to be taking into consideration compared to some other cameras that you can, easily just flip the screen to the top. I believe the A7C, you can flip the screen to the top. I believe so, but I'm not entirely sure. But this thing actually tracks my eye, tracks my face fantastically. Wow. Yeah, so even just for this one improvement, I am for sure is going to be updating my A7 III. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm pretty much just going to sell my A7 III and use this as my main choice for shooting people, for shooting my cats, and general purpose. And again, if I'm in the studio, I don't need this crazy autofocus performance, and I don't need a much improved ergonomics because I'm just shooting products. So I'll still be using my A7R III because again, it's got a much higher megapixel count compared to the A7 III. Or it's still higher than the A7 IV because I think the A7 IV is what, 33 megapixel? But anyway, so that's what I'm gonna do. And every other experience, it just feels like another Sony camera. So if you have Sony cameras, really, it's not gonna take you much longer to get accustomed to the brand new camera. And with the improved manual system and a full touchscreen, I think you're gonna enjoy this camera quite a lot more compared to your old cameras. And I bet once you start using this camera, you'll eventually want to get rid of the old cameras because the new manual system is just so much better as well. And again, the ergonomics are improved quite a lot. You no longer have to have your pinky like hanging without a reach. Now you can just very comfortably hold the camera. Now it's okay, it's slightly bigger, but again, look at the Canon and Nikon offerings. They all have their camera, you know, at the very beginning, the design of those cameras are actually larger than the old Sony A7 series. But I think Sony actually considered ergonomics at this point with their newest offerings and had a camera that's just, you know, so good to hold in the hand and improved pretty much every other way in terms of ergonomics and user experience. So I think just for that, yes, you should definitely upgrade to the A7 IV in that regard. Let me see the electronic viewfinder. So the electronic viewfinder, it's the pixel count on the EVF is actually up slightly higher than the A7 III. In that regard, the A7 III had quite a low viewfinder pixel count on the electronic one. Let me just take a look really quick. So yeah, I mean, even that, the electronic viewfinder on the A7 III is still pretty usable, and even I would say even for the LCD screen, it's actually quite usable even in daylight. So I really don't have any complaint about the actual user experience of the screen. But of course, on the A7R III, the viewfinder count and the EVF is much higher pixel. So in turn, if you want to review some product shots in detail on the viewfinder or on the LCD screen, it's actually much better to review the details on the A7R series compared to the A7 III and A7 IV, because again, the view LCD screen pixel count is much higher on those high pixel count cameras from the Sony. And but then again, I think if you're asking me between the A7 III, between the A7 IV and the A7R series, which for me is the A7R III, should you upgrade from the A7 III? It really depends. Now, like, if you shoot a lot more video, you definitely would benefit from the new A7 IV because the video function has been improved. The tracking is much better, and the video output is 422 10-bit native. Okay, on the old one, it's 422 8-bit. The only time you're gonna get 10-bit output is using an HDMI with the external recorder. But that defies the purpose of using a small camera and shoot on the spot because you're gonna have a much more complex setup with the A7 III. It's doable, but it's more complex. On the A7 IV, you can do it right inside the camera, okay? Like that's like, you can have a much smaller camera profile if you're doing a lot of shoots and you want to reduce your weight. So that's definitely one huge improvement. So in that regard, video, compared to the A7 III, yes, you should upgrade. In terms of the image quality, you get a slightly higher pixel count, but again, nowadays the ISO for all the cameras, you know, full frame, it's I would say it's excellent. You know, at least on the noise control level, it's excellent on all those full frame cameras. The A7 III is already fantastic. I have no complaint about the noise performance. From my review of other people, or from the DP review, the ISO is slightly better on this in the higher ISO range, and of course, it's got a slightly bumped up pixel count as well. So yes, you're gonna get a slightly better pixel count on the A7 IV, but is it gonna make a difference? Probably not. So if you're mainly shooting, you know, general purpose photography and you find the autofocus in your A7 III already excellent, it's already doing, you know, eye tracking, it's already doing eye tracking on animals as well. If you are happy with the autofocus of the A7 III, you don't need to spend the extra, you know, $700 to upgrade to the A7 IV because the A7 III, again, in my opinion, is still a fantastic camera considering its age. And you can save that $700 and put it on a much better lens, which is going to last you much, much longer. And maybe when it's time to upgrade again in a few years, they'll have a much better camera coming out, okay? And in terms of product photography, higher resolution needs, and I think you're probably going to benefit from getting one of those A7R cameras because they are natively have a better sensor, okay? The sensor is much, much higher pixel count. If you're shooting products, if you're shooting jewelries, if you're shooting watches, those higher pixel count most definitely helps in the studio. And again, you're not going to be actually using any of those features on the A7 IV, to be honest. Your focus is going to probably, for the most part, be single focus and not even continuous focus. You definitely going to benefit from A7R's higher pixel count. In that regard, you should go with A7R instead of spending money on the A7 IV. And you can get a A7R III probably nowadays for less than the A7 IV, cost of A7 IV. And it's still a very high performance camera in studio in that regard. And or you should spend a little bit more money and get a A7R IV, and that camera is improved, of course, in every way compared to the A7 III. So the A7 IV, and again, in my opinion, is only for people who had a need for better autofocus compared to the A7 III, and who also starts to do a lot of video production work and needs better video output. In those regards, you should definitely consider the A7 IV compared to the A7 III. Otherwise, you should stick with A7 III, save those extra money, and buy a better lens. Another thing, or one thing, I think, the only thing that got a negative, or I would say performance degrade, is the battery life. Because from the review, from dpreview.com, the battery life of the A7 IV actually is decreased compared to the A7 III. The A7 III, I think it was rated for over 700 pictures per battery charge, but the A7 IV is only able to do a little bit more than 500 shots on a single charge. So you definitely probably always want two batteries when you go out and on an important shoot, okay? But that should wrap up this really quick unboxing and first impression, and who should be getting the A7 III. And to me, it's definitely a ergonomic and performance improvements on top of the A7 III. But for some other purpose, specific purpose, you probably would still want to get A7R series cameras if higher resolution is what you need, okay? This camera, the performance improvements are mainly focused on the autofocus performance as well as the ergonomics. And to a certain extent, okay? If you guys have any questions or problems or concerns about the brand new A7 IV compared to some of my other cameras, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below. And of course, this is the first day I had this camera, and I was so excited. I want to do an unboxing and do some quick comparison for you guys. Obviously, it's not a comprehensive review, but as I use the camera, I might come back and give you guys an update on what I think about this camera in comparison to the A7 III during an actual photo shoot. If you guys have any questions and you want to know about the A7 IV compared to the A7 III and the A7R III, which is the camera I have at this moment, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please do hit the like button or subscribe to my channel, and I would highly appreciate it. Thanks again, and see you in the next video. Take care.